We have 5 different fabrics. I know this is 2 different colours, but that's because I didn't have enough scrap, so I've used 2 different colours for variation, but that is just one fabric. So fabric 1, I have 2 2-inch squares, 1 piece of 3.5 inch by 2 inch, and 2 pieces of 6.5 inch squares. Fabric 2, I have 4 2-inch squares and 4 3.5 inch by 2 inch rectangles. Fabric 3, I've got 8 2-inch squares. Fabric 4, I've got 3.5 by 2 inch. I have 3.5 inch square, 6.5 inch by 2 inch, and I have 2 of those. 12.5 inch by 2 inch, and I have 2 of those. That's fabric 4. And then fabric 5, I have 2 pieces of 6.5 inch by 2 inch and 2 pieces of 12.5 inch by 2 inch. For the foundation, I'm going to use a piece of muslin, and I want to draw myself a 12-inch square. So I'm just going to put a mark every 1.5 inches all the way around, and I'm going to do it on all 4 sides. So now what I haven't drawn the lines, but I have a 12-inch square with a 1.5 inch grid. First thing we need to do is draw across the centre line. And now I'm just going to mark the 1.5 inches on this centre line. Now for this centre mark here, I'm going to draw a diagonal line straight across from the centre side mark. And exactly the same again from this piece. Draw from the top to the centre line on the first mark in from the edge. And then we're going to miss the next one and draw it again on the next one over. From the top down, I want to draw straight across the first line, miss the second one and draw straight across the third line. Moving towards the right, the next line over. I don't want to draw down the first section, I just want to draw from the second line down to the centre. This line that we missed out, I just want to draw from the outside line into that first drawn line. I don't want to cross any lines. We're going to go back down to the second half. So just inside this triangle piece here, so I'm not going to cross the lines. I'm just going to draw straight across, but only inside the triangle. So straight across, straight across, straight across. Let me just redo that one again so you can see that hopefully. Now there's just a couple more lines to draw, and all these are 45-degree diagonal lines. So we're going to draw one in this first top corner. So just draw a diagonal line in the first square at the top. And then this next square along, we're going to come from that square down to the centre and back up. So I'm just going to mark the centres. And I'm going to do the same on this side one. I'm just going to mark the centres. So now we're going to draw a diagonal line from this corner down to the centre and then back up again, up to the other corner. And then back down to this one here. Now I want to continue doing another one going up, so we're just going to go up to the next line over. Now I want to draw a triangle in this one, going from that corner to the middle and back out. The same for this one, going from the bottom corner up to the middle and back down. And the same for this one, from this bottom corner to the middle and back out. And there's one last corner, so we're just going to draw a diagonal across that corner, and that is our finished template. I'm just going to extend these lines out so that I can see them, and I'm going to place the first fabric down, lining up the corners with that extended line, and then with the right sides facing down I'm going to put fabric 2 on, and I'm just going to draw straight down that line and pin in place. So I'm going to go and sew along this drawn line. So I'm using my 1/4 inch foot, and I'm just going to sew straight over that line, nice and gently. Remove the pins. Just trim that excess off. So I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch seam allowance and just cut that off. And then I'm going to fold that top one down and give it a press. Be careful not to press over your drawn lines because they will erase if you're using a friction pen. Now what I want to do is, I think this piece here. So what I'm going to do is mark the centre and then take fabric 3 and draw a diagonal line from that corner to that corner, and I'm going to go and sew along that drawn line. And what I want to do now is just cut off this excess fabric. So I'm just eyeballing 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll give that a press. Now what I want to do is add a second square to this side. So draw your line, and now I'm just going to go and sew that piece in place. So I've done exactly the same on that one, and I'm just going to cut the excess fabric away, and I'm going to press that seam open. And now I want to repeat that block for the remainder 3 pieces. So I've made this piece 4 times. I'm going to put 3 aside, and I'm going to line this up with the edge of the previous one, right sides together, and pin that in place. And we're just going to go and sew along that seam there, and open that out and just finger press it down. I'm just going to put a pin in there. Fabric 2, and I want to add that one in that place. So I'm going to line those 2 right sides together and just draw that seam line straight across, and I'm just going to go and sew along that drawn line. I'm just going to finger press that down, and I'm just going to put a pin in to hold that in place. Now we're going to work on this section here. So we already have this piece which is going to go there. Now we need fabric 4. I'm going to join these 2 together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as you can see it goes just past that point. And I'm going to do exactly the same for the bottom edge. I'm just going to line up my edges and sew a 1/4 inch which will go through that point straight across. And I've done the same on that side. I'm going to press, keep the seam allowances flat. I'm not going to open them. I know you can see them, but I'm okay with that. So now we are going to join these together, and I'm going to now line up the edges, and as I can see my stitching line is in line with the drawn line, so I know I've got that lined up. I'm going to pin it into place. So I'm going to draw on this top piece, and that's the line I'm going to sew on. I've sewn down that straight line, press that seam down, being careful not to go over any of my drawn lines. Join that seam there, so that piece will go there. But I want to work on this piece first. fabric 1, fabric 5, that there is fabric 1, and that is fabric 2. So we're going to have to put all that together. So I'm going to first do this small one. So right sides together and draw the diagonal, this diagonal line here, and pin that in place. So we'll do that one first, and then I'm just going to work on this end as well. So these two fabrics, which is this piece here, right sides together, and I'm going to draw that diagonal line across and pin those two in place. So I'm just going to go and sew down those two lines. Now this is the side that we're cutting off. I've just sewn just scant at the line. So when we pull this over, we're not going to be short. If we sewed it on the line or just under, we wouldn't be able to get that perfect piece in that we want. So that's just a tip. I'm just going to cut off the excess fabric with and just eyeball the seam allowance. Make sure you cut in the right side, the scrap side, and I'm just going to press that open. I'm not opening my seams. When you're ironing a 45 degree, don't move your iron, just put it on, because you don't want to stretch that seam, because that is on a bias and you don't want to twist your fabric. Okay, so this is going to be this piece here, and now we want to attach this piece here at a 45 degree. So I'm going to flip it over, and this time draw my diagonal line across. Now I've got a 45 degree mark on my ruler, and I'm making sure that is level with the edge of my fabric, and my straight edge is at the point, and that will give me perfect 45 degree. Now that I've drawn this mark on this piece, I want to attach it to this piece, but I want it to be a straight piece. So when it's finished, I want it to be like that. So a good way of just making sure you're doing that is fold it under like that and flip your fabric down. So as you can see, it's got to go that shape, and then I'm just going to match the edges. So now I know when I've sewn that line and I open it out, it's going to give me that long piece that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to go to my machine and stitch that line. So I've sewn that line, and before I cut it, I just want to double check, and yes, I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to cut off my excess and press it all flat. So we have that piece. Okay, so now I'm just going to make this section here, these three. These are going back to the 6.5 inches. So it's this one, these are all right sides together. So I'm going to sew down there, open it out, and then sew that one down there. So I'm going to have 3 strips sewn together. Flatten it all down. Now I'm going to attach this piece to this piece. So I'm just going to, it goes that way. Yeah, I've attached this to the wrong piece. So I'm going to go in and pick that. Unfortunately, it wasn't a piece that was cut. If it was, I'd just cut another piece to replace it. Okay, so let me do it right this time. So it goes like that and like that. So I'm just going to go and sew these two, this seam together first. Okay, so I press that down. Now what I want to do is join this to this piece here. So I want it to go that way around, which we've already established. I'm just going to make sure I line up these seams here. And I'm just going to go and sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's bring our piece over. So now what we want to do is join these two pieces together. So I'm going to try and match this line here with that point there. So I'm going to put my needle in at that point. So my needle is straight through that point, and I'm going to put that point into that mark there, and that's where I want that seam to cross. So I'm just going to twist my pin and push it down, and then match up the rest of the edge and sew straight down there. And that worked out quite well. So now we need to join this piece onto this piece. So I'm just going to bring it over, right sides together, and I'm going to try and match up the seams. I'm just going to push the pin in and bring it through where I want it on this one and pin it down. And then match this seam as well. So push the pin in. And I'm going to draw that seam. So from this mark here down to the bottom, I'm going to draw a straight line over my fabric. And that's my stitch line. I'm just going to go and stitch this down to the foundation. And I'm just going to give it a press. So now we're going to continue along going down. Now the next pieces, these ones, I have cut really long, as you can see, but I just thought it would be easier to create a strip. Actually, I have a small piece here. So for this bottom piece, I'm going to sew these three together first, and then this bottom piece, I'm just going to match the centres and then sew this bottom piece on. So I'm going to go and do that. Remember to sew it all right sides together. So I've sewn my strip plus the little piece on the bottom, and I'm just going to iron all these seams flat. And this piece is going to go here, but not yet, because I want to finish off the whole thing first. So I'm just going to get my fabric again. So what I want to do is line it up, right sides together, and draw the diagonal line. I'm going to do one piece at a time. I'm just going to take this to the machine, and just like we did for the smaller pieces, just sew that down that line, and I'm going to repeat the same. So I'll move this one out of the way, sew that one first, and then I'll sew that one down. Okay, so I'm just going to cut away the excess. And now this is going to be sewn onto that seam there. So I'm just going to extend that mark out both ends so that I can see it. There's no seams to line up on this piece. I'm just going to draw my seam allowance. Make sure there's no pins, I'll get rid of that one. Now I'm just going to go and sew that down. Press that down. Finished block, and it's 12.5 inches, but it's actually a 12-inch block because these are, you see, it's 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around.